Tonight we're gonna talk about greenhouses and about controlling our environment, because we live in a place that the environment always doesn't cooperate very well with us. And so anyways, we'll get started today. First of all, like, a greenhouse is basically just a controlled environment. It's a place where we can manipulate the climate so that we can grow plants that we normally couldn't grow in our area. And a lot of times we use the greenhouses for extending our growing season, for producing or getting plants started early so that they will produce. So that's what a greenhouse is. And there's all kinds of greenhouses out there, but we're really talking about control here. What can we control? So temperature's the biggest one that we think of when we think about greenhouses. A greenhouse is, well, we hear about like the greenhouse effect, what happens to our environment when we get too many greenhouse gases in our in the atmosphere, and as energy from the sun comes down to the earth, it gets trapped in our atmosphere. And that's basically what we're doing with a greenhouse. We're trapping the heat that is produced from the sun in a smaller environment. We can also control the humidity. Every year when I'd get started out in the greenhouse, we'd start out there in January, late January, early February, and we just have a few plants there. And Idaho winters are dry. Even though we get a lot of snow, it's still very dry in the air. And until we can get a lot of plants growing in that greenhouse, we always struggle with humidity. Humidity is a pretty important thing for a lot of the plants that we have. So humidity is another key control that we want to look at. Oxygen and carbon dioxide is another one. In some of our bigger greenhouses, they will pump carbon dioxide into the plants. Air movement is really important. If I don't have any air moving in my high tunnel or my greenhouse this time of year, what's going to happen? That stagnant air is a really great place for disease, for fungi to grow, and that can spell disaster for the plants that we have in our greenhouses. Okay, and then light is the last one that we're going to talk about. The quality of light that plants get really influences the ability of those plants to photosynthesize and grow and be productive. I've got a robotic garden right now inside a lab, and I've got some plants that have been growing for about a month, and they look terrible. All I have is the light from the fluorescent lights in there, and they just look terrible. They're stringy. The stems aren't thickening up. We're not getting leaf growth, and pretty soon, if I don't get some artificial light on there, those plants are going to die. They're just not going to be able to produce the sugar that they need so that they can grow and be productive. But we can control the light in the greenhouses as well. So let's get into some of the types of greenhouses, and I'll throw all these pictures up here for you. These are some of the more common types of greenhouses that we find that homeowners have. The attached lean-to, this one right here with red brick, is a very common, inexpensive type of greenhouse. You use the wall of the home or the whatever building it is to help insulate that and help to retain some of that heat. This attached even span, this is a pretty terrible picture, but this is basically what they are. The end wall is attached to the home or to another structure, and the greenhouse extends off of that. This one up here is an attached window mount greenhouse. It's part of the home, and it's just meant to get more sunlight onto those house plants. And then finally we have these freestanding greenhouses. And so those are our four basic types of greenhouses. High tunnels are a little bit different. why would we not consider high tunnel a greenhouse?
Theoretically, you're not supposed to have any heat applied to it, right?
Right, right. And in addition to that, most of our high tunnels are not permanent structures. Yeah, so that those are exactly why we don't consider them. Now, can I use a high tunnel very similar to a greenhouse? Absolutely. And if you were to put heat in there, then you could mimic what a greenhouse does really well. Location and orientation of your greenhouse. So your greenhouse needs to get as much south facing sun as you can get. And so because of that, we want to orient them west to east or east to west, whichever way you prefer. So the long side of our greenhouse is going to be facing south. You'll get the good sunlight from in the morning from the east, get good sunlight in the evening from the west, but most of the day you're going to be getting good sunlight from the south. So I'm going to go back one, sorry. So that does a few things in the morning and in the evening, because the sun is down so low on the horizon, we tend to get a lot more shade from other things, from the greenhouse or the high tunnel, from the supports inside. We just get a lot more shade. So as the sun gets up higher in the sky, then we start getting better sunlight. So the light is a pretty important reason why we're going to orient it that way. We also want to think about shelter. How do we protect that structure from the wind? Because we know it blows in Idaho, and we want to try to preserve that huge investment that we have with protecting it from that wind. In addition, think about the things outside the greenhouse. So if you have a bunch of big trees, are you going to be able to get sunlight when you need it, where you need it? Okay. Design and construction, we're going to go through each one of these. This is one of the greenhouses that we built up in Ashton. We had the cement pad. I had my students build the cement pad, and we had a different greenhouse on the location. We tore that down and put this one up, so we had to extend that greenhouse. Notice these big trees on the end. That's on the west side of the greenhouse, and that was on somebody else's property. It's just where it fit. It's not ideal to have trees like that there. But anyways, so as far as shapes go, there's lots of different shapes, very different. The best for as far as shedding the snow, which is what I care about up here in Fremont County, we just get a lot of snow, is this Gothic arch. It's pointed at the top, but it does slope down all the way down to the ground. One nice thing is when you have a Quonset or a Gothic arch, that snow that the greenhouse sheds in the winter will help insulate your greenhouse. So that helped us quite a bit. A gable roof, it just looks like a traditional home, right? With a rafter on the top. The slant leg, A-frame. Anyways, those are our shapes that we've got. Frames, what you build your greenhouse, your high tunnel out of, is gonna depend a whole lot on how much money you have to spend. There's certainly some more inexpensive ways to build a greenhouse. If I'm building a greenhouse and want it to last a long time and I have the money to spend, I'm going to use galvanized steel to do that. Galvanized steel resists corrosion, so you're not going to rust as much. It's very strong, much stronger than even your aluminum alloys. Your steel is going to rust. Even if you have it painted well, any scratch in that paint will start that corrosive process. A lot of people will use wood. Wood's a good option, but it's not a super permanent option. Just understand that. And then we have plastic as well, this PVC. You know, Ron's high tunnels, he uses PVC for his ribs, and it works really well for him. So your plastic just isn't going to have the strength for the snow load if you're trying to have that up all winter long. I know Ron has developed some workarounds around that to make his PVC high tunnels last all winter, even with the plastic on. Isn't that right, Ron?
Yeah, I had to re-engineer it a little bit for the snow load, but yeah.
Yeah. And also, like I said, we're here in Idaho. We've got a lot of wind. Whatever you build your greenhouse out of, it needs to be able to withstand that wind as well. And so that's another consideration that you need to make sure to support that greenhouse or the structure. Okay. As far as covering your greenhouse, there's lots and lots of different materials that you can use to cover that. Probably the most inexpensive is this PVC or the polyethylene plastic. If you're going to use that, I would get a minimum of 6 mils, and you can buy UV resistant polyethylene plastic. And what that does is it makes it last longer. In fact, most of your greenhouse, your plastic people will carry that in stock. They guarantee it for like 6 years or something like that. If you want to upgrade your insulation on your high tunnel in the winter, a really simple way to do that is to put 2 layers of plastic on there, 2 layers of this polyethylene plastic, and mount a blower fan so that it blows air in between those layers. That's the technique that we used for probably the first 10 years that I had a greenhouse up in Ashton, and it worked really, really well. I was amazed at how well it shed the snow. It helped keep us warm in the winter. It was just a really good option. You get a little bit more expensive as you get this acrylic covering, acrylic plastic, very strong and really easy to work with, but it is more expensive. You can get big sheets of that. I think our plastic was, when we put this is what we have on our current greenhouse up there, excuse me, and it's, I think, 6 foot by 20 foot long, so pretty big. Okay, inside your greenhouse, a lot of people will put in-ground planters. Where I was at, it didn't make sense to do in-ground anything, and so we used benches, and you can arrange them however you want. I don't think I ever had the same setup 2 years in a row for how I arranged things in my greenhouse, but that's something that you should consider. You can do really inexpensive 2x4 benches with oh, I don't know what you call that. It's with sheep fencing on top of that stapled down, and that works well. These plastic top benches were really nice to move over to those. I could slide things down those benches from table to table, and it just worked really nice. Walkways and floors, you can have a solid floor like we did with the concrete. You can do gravel. You can do really anything on the floor. The biggest thing that you're going to want to be aware of is you want to be able to have good drainage in there. And you want to be able to, if the water gets left on for a little while, it's not going to cause issues. So I would plan for drainage if I was putting a new one in. Okay. As far as heating, there's lots of different options. If you have access to natural gas, a natural gas heater is probably your cheapest method. But you can also use electric heat. You can use wood heat. Some people will burn oil. There's just all kinds of ways to heat your greenhouse. Just make sure, as you can see on this one, this exhaust pipe, that exhaust can get hot. And so you want to make sure to protect the side of your greenhouse with something around that exhaust pipe so that you're not melting holes. Okay. Solar is the best way to heat your greenhouse. It is by far the easiest, because that's the purpose of the greenhouse, is to collect that solar heat. So in this greenhouse, this is the greenhouse that we have currently. We had some real big issues one year where I think our temperature, I'm going to blame it on the temperature. It couldn't have been me or my students. It had to be the temperature that we ended up losing our entire crop that year of the things that we were growing. We just couldn't get anything to grow. And so that next year we put in floor heating in, and we haven't had any problems since. So that was a really good thing that we did. I know a lot of people will dig down into the earth to help increase the heat that they can retain, and use the heat from the soil as well. And we can kind of see that just a little bit here in this last photograph. But those are different ways that you can control the heat there. Ventilation and cooling, we talked about why it's so important. We've got to eliminate the opportunity for fungi and the diseases that are associated with those to take hold. So this is similar to what we have in a high tunnel, where we can roll those sides up and get a cross breeze over those plants. That can really help your plants or help to avoid getting disease. I encourage everybody to have circulating fans in their greenhouse. I don't care how big it is. A small fan can do a world of good. Even in my high tunnel, I just installed a circulating fan in my high tunnel, just because I want to be able to circulate that air in there. And I won't use it all the time, but anytime that I have to close it down, having that circulation is really good. The best way to cool your greenhouse is to get rid of the hot air in the greenhouse. And to do that, we use exhaust fans. So this fan is going to be pointed towards the outside. And when it turns on, it's going to pull that hot air from the inside and push it to the outside. And that's the best way to cool those greenhouses. Now, if on the other end of the greenhouse, if you can put these, it's like a big swamp cooler. It's these cooling pads with water dripping over those. When that exhaust fan kicks on, if you can have those cooling pads on the other end, it's just going to really drop the temperature. You can drop the temperature 20 degrees in just a couple of minutes with good cooling pads on the other side. Okay. Lighting, there's so much about lighting that I probably need to know more about, but plants use that full spectrum of light. They're going to use the visual light, but they're also going to use infrared and ultraviolet light to photosynthesize. The quality of light is really important. You need to make sure to get that light as close to those plants as you can get. And so having lights that you can adjust up and down, vertically up and down as those plants grow, can be a really beneficial thing. But you can see with these big greenhouses, how they have those lights up high, that's not going to hurt anything. In fact, it's going to help a lot. So just those are some options. You can get a lot of different kinds of lights on Amazon. There's tons of great sources for those. Okay. I would suggest getting water into your greenhouse or into your high tunnel, whatever it is, and put in a frost-free hydrant. If you can make that happen, that's going to be the best thing that you can do. That frost-free hydrant, what happens is when you shut that hydrant off, it's got a check valve in the bottom, and the water is going to drain outside of the bottom of that. So your water line is down below that frost line, and you're draining water out so that you don't freeze that pipe. That way you get water all winter long. Okay. Here's the drain that we put in. We put in 2 French drains in this greenhouse. it doesn't take much to fill those up when we're watering, when we've got a full greenhouse like that, like this right here. We just get a lot of water.